Hey, what's up, y'all? And welcome back to another alternative factuals video. Forgive me for being I think it's been like about 2 weeks, because maybe a little longer than that. Actually, it's been longer actually. I know the last video I posted had to do with centers, but a lot has just been going on. A lot of good things, and I've just been very consumed and busy because a lot of you know I work in film as well, and I like to create my own projects, and a lot of things are going very well right now. So just wanted to focus on that for a little bit, but today I had some time and I wanted to record a video, especially after seeing the trailers for Superman and you know what James Gunn is going to be doing for the DC universe when it comes to their movie aspects. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm one of those people, I'm in that church of, or that school of thought, where I've kind of been disillusioned by the DC movies previously. Not all of them were terrible. Some of them were successful and really good and enjoyable. But I think, at least for me personally, because it wasn't as cohesive and consistent, that's mostly what's kind of broken the illusion for me. But DC, the new Superman movie looks pretty good. But besides that, I don't want to just talk about that. I actually want to talk about something I haven't talked about in a while. And that specifically is Black Lightning. Black Lightning, you know, is one of my favorite characters. You know, when I have Static and stuff like that. But ultimately, I want to talk about Black Lightning and how I would approach making this character come to be in James Gunn's universe when it comes to the new DC movies and stuff and situations like that. But remember, if you enjoy this video, like, share, subscribe. You already know what to do. I'm here for a good time. I'm trying to make this a lot more fun, a lot more lighthearted, enjoyable, so that way we don't take ourselves too seriously, but something you can kind of just interact with, you know, something you can theorize with me. And without further ado, let's kind of just jump into today's video. So I'm going to kind of go down, not a list, but I'm going to create a scenario in which I would kind of bring Black Lightning into this new DC universe and how I would do it. And I'll try and be as detailed as possible, but obviously I'm not going to have every waking detail as humanly possible. But in reality, I still wanted to do this so that way we can kind of get an idea of where I would stand with this situation. So if it was me, if I were to bring Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning, into the DC universe, I would have him come in pretty young. I would want him to be approximately maybe 25 to 28. So he's been operating as a superhero for maybe 2 or 3 years, but he himself is not like super duper experienced. And this maybe should be like, I don't know what age Black Lightning decided to have his children when it came to Anissa and Jennifer specifically, but maybe, you know, I would say late 20s, like 28, 29, or 27 to 29 basically, because that still leaves room for them to make the choice of whether or not he just had children, like in terms of they're really young and they're like maybe 1 or 2 years old, or it gives him time that he can still have children within the next couple movies or whatever like that, and still be relatively young enough to play the role for, like, you know, however long they need him to play the role. And he can still be in one of those, you know, education-based roles where he's not quite the principal yet. Maybe he's a dean of a school, maybe he's the assistant principal, or maybe he's still even a teacher, you know, at the high school in Metropolis, for example, and he does heroing part-time. And he's trying to balance those responsibilities. That's something that we can truly see. And then also, like I said, it just makes things a little bit more excited, especially if he doesn't have his children, because let's say this is a couple years before he has Anissa and then shortly after Jennifer, then it could be a situation where we got to know him as a hero, what he stands for, kind of how he's going to be in that universe. And then a couple years after, he's going to have a family. And then with that family, how it's going to be really difficult for him to juggle having a family, being a superhero, and being a teacher. And of course, I wanted him young, especially because even though in DC Comics, his powers don't necessarily get weak in the same way that they kind of made it seem like in the CW TV show, even though I still think he was pretty cool in the show, I want to see him at his prime. I want to see when his powers are like at maximum efficiency, maximum raw power. So maybe as he gets older, I personally don't think Black Lightning should be showing any signs of weakening when it comes to his ability to control certain abilities. And also, I think we should really see, like, you know, how his powers still even develop as he's transitioning into the part of his life where he starts to have kids. Because remember, he's an energy-based hero, which means, you know, energy changes and evolves, but it can't be destroyed. And I think that would really play well into his character if his powers grew over time instead of weakening, But I think what would make his powers interesting when he was I guess if let's say if he would get older, let's say he was like to be 60, 70 years old, maybe he still has the same amount of powers, but his body can't handle that much power anymore. That would be a better take on it. Instead of him actually being weak, it would be like he's extremely powerful, but his body can only tolerate the abilities, at a certain age or something like that. That's if they want to. But in reality, we know he could turn into an energy form as well, so that might defeat the purpose. But either way, I want his powers to grow as he kind of goes along and becomes more of a hero and deal with his life of being a superhero while also being a teacher. Now, what also will make this cool is him and Superman actually did meet. I forget which comic it was. I believe it was in JLA at one point. I think it was 1980 something, maybe. I might be wrong about that, but obviously on the screen you'll see there'll be a correct date, issue, all that, in which Black Lightning had a crossover and they themselves started to become cool with each other. And Black Lightning is extremely, extremely powerful because no matter how invulnerable Superman truly is, in reality he is still a biological being who runs off of bioelectricity. His brain has neurons that fire, which run off of energy. And even if his body is, stronger in a lot of ways, he still runs on that energy. And Jefferson is plenty powerful enough to shut off those parts of his brain because, if I remember correctly, he has done it before. He's shut down Superman's brain before with like a really powerful energy blast, and he's done it to multiple heroes as well. And like I said, when Black Lightning's in his full power form, when he's in an energy form, then that's when all bets are off essentially. But they would be a very interesting duo to meet early in Superman's career as well as Jefferson's career, because they're both heroes who respect each other. They respect what they bring to Metropolis, and also too, like Clark, Superman kind of operates differently. Jefferson is more of a street level hero, and he obviously won't cross lines with Superman so much, but there will be times where they overlap because Jefferson is just that powerful. Black Lightning is just that powerful. So there will be some instances of situations where he can intervene and help Superman, or they're working the same case, especially when it comes to Lex Luthor, because Lex Luthor doesn't just work on things on a planetary level, but he works on things on a local level as well, because no matter how small the detail is, they all will add up to his grand plan at the end. Now, also what we saw in recent comics as well is that Black Lightning was technically like a Bat Family adjacent member, where basically he was an ally. He wasn't a sidekick, obviously, because Jefferson was someone that Batman trusted, and especially we're going to James Gunn's universe. So basically Jefferson has ties to both Superman and Batman, both living in Metropolis, being trusted by Batman, both knowing what he had to deal with as a black man, let alone a black superhero, and how he got his powers, and kind of the situation that transpired in the areas of Metropolis in which Black Lightning, Jefferson Pierce, had to deal with in order for him to even make it to the point that he gets his abilities. It would be really interesting to see these kind of situations pop up. And even if they would, let's say, give him an own spin-off movie, or even just a movie where he works with somebody else, Jefferson will always have an interesting perspective, because he would always want to see the good in people, but also he's not dumb enough to, I guess, ignore the possibility that people sometimes can't change or refuse to change, or they may not change in that moment. So he's very nice, but he's also very aware of the reality of how the world really works. So he'll give people an opportunity to do better, but also he won't give you the chance to hurt him or his family or his friends. So that's one of the things I want to see the most when it comes to this project. And also we know that James Gunn wants to make a more diverse street level JLA kind of thing going on. Green Hour, Hawkeye, Plastic Man, the question, like, he wants to bring all this stuff in, and Black Lightning would be a great addition to all of this, especially what he's capable of. Now, I want to dive specifically into his powers. I did mention I did want to see him in his prime. That's more of a vague term, or at least a vague reference. His full powers are essentially just, him having full access to his energy form, especially when he's young. I don't want to see really too much energy degrading from him as he gets older, because the thing is, in his full energy form and full totality of his power, he's essentially living energy in a sense. His body becomes essentially living energy. It kind of wishes and washes, you know, through the years, and you know, there's no absolute, but I think that should be a form he should always have access to, and they can figure out, I guess, how they want to go about doing things. But I need him to have full access to his powers. 2, I want to make sure that his regular lightning form is different than his, not regular lightning form, but his regular lightning abilities are different from when he's accessing his black lightning. Because we know in the comics that he has his regular lightning, which, you know, just his energy by itself, but then his black lightning is something that's a little different from his traditional abilities. A lot of the situations in which his powers were described as actually being black, you know, the lightning actually being black, was for a few reasons. One, some people think it's like just how his metahuman gene expressed his abilities, and it would always manifest as like a black or dark blue due to the unique electromagnetic properties of his powers. Another continuity, or the early continuity of Black Lightning in the original 1977 debut, was Black Lightning didn't initially have powers. His abilities came from a technological belt designed by his mentor, Peter Gamby. The belt then artificially granted his electrical powers, and the dark energy may have been a stylistic or functional choice. But some people in the fandom speculate that, you know, because I think at one point they did just blend multiple origins together. So he did have the belt, and then the belt then eventually transitioned and gave him his abilities. Some people think the belt influenced his abilities and how the powers decided to manifest. Also, in his name, some people just display it as just simply just a part of like a symbolic representation. So some people just be like, oh, it's just Black Lightning, but in reality, his lightning was never black in some instances. And then in the TV show, his powers more traditionally blue-white, but his costume and energy aura retain those darker tones to remain that comic book aesthetic. So it really depends on what you want to do. But in reality, I think it would be cool if they kept the metagene biology aspect where his abilities would transition black. And maybe that can just be a visual representation of how his powers in his energy form just exponentially grow, and he has access to more power. But in terms of the grand scheme of power as well, there's not a lot of things that Black Lightning couldn't do, because he controls a lot of the electromagnetic spectrum. And believe it or not, him and Static's powers, even though they're different, they're similar. So it's hard to truly deeply say who's more powerful as well, but that's not the point of this video. I'm just using it as a point of reference that if you know Static is powerful, Black Lightning is extremely powerful as well. Especially by the time Static comes around, Black Lightning has a little bit more experience. And I think at one point he did mentor Virgil in his abilities and how to use them and how to be creative with them as well. So that's kind of what I would do if I was James Gunn. I would bring in Black Lightning, I would bring in Anissa, I would bring in Jennifer, I would bring in that entire aspect. I'll even bring in Tobias, because, you know, in the Black Lightning TV show, I love Tobias, even though he was just like the most racist black man ever. But, you know, in reality, it's the real world, you know, and Tobias came up with all these jokes for all these characters. So yeah, like I think that's something that they should definitely do for the series, because I think Black Lightning can fit the direction in which they're headed towards. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this video. Like, let me know if you feel Black Lightning could make an entrance into James Gunn's new DC universe. And once again, if you like the video, like, share, and of course subscribe, and I'll holla at y'all later. Peace out.